Hi, my name is John Benitez. Welcome to the Jazz History presentation about bebop. And we're going to break this down in two periods. So the bebop, the beginning of the bebop, the birth of bebop in the 1940s, and then hard bop post bebop. It's going to be in the second video. I would like you to check out the listening PDF with a list of all the links of all the artists that we are going to mention in this presentation, and also a series of questions for a quiz, and based on the research that you are doing on these two videos and this presentation. So I hope you enjoy it. And here we are. We are going to talk about bebop. So I want to speak about some of the characteristics of bebop. The performing aspects that are different from swing. Some of them is the orchestration, when versus more in the big band, the big band era. We found bigger orchestration, big band, bigger groups, ensembles. In bebop, it's smaller, 3 to 6 members, the most at the beginning of that period. So faster tempos than swing band tempos. Okay? So the BPM were over 200 in most of the songs. If you check out some of the tempos of some of the Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie tunes by Powell, you find that the BPM 200, 230, 120, even 300. So the tempos were like really fast. The use of the clarinet and the guitar, we could say that is more characteristic of the pre bebop era. The swing era. All the styles and all the eras that came before bebop. But in bebop, just at the birth, you hardly see clarinet and guitar. Eventually, after that, they came back. So, and we're gonna see that, but not at in this time. Higher instrumental proficiency. So we see a domain and a virtuosistic approach in the performance of all the players. We see that because of the tempos, because of the accuracy of the subdivisions, the use of the triplets, the use of the syncopation, the rhythms, they develop a very virtuosistic approach in their instruments. The knowledge of harmony, melody, all that. Bebop became the first style of jazz that was not used for dancing. This is very important because although in the music you feel the aspect of the African roots and the dance, and you feel in the body the movement of the music. The music was not meant to be for dancing at the beginning. So this is the first style of jazz that really was not used for dancing at the beginning. Bebop musicians, and what are the characteristics of bebop in their identity, in their performance? I could say that some of them, they became disassociated from their own audience. More even their employers non-jazz musicians, and even from other jazz musicians. Yeah. They were trying to raise the level of jazz from dance music to a chamber art form. So the emphasis was more on the performance and the stories that are behind um, their counterfacts, their versions of popular songs that were characteristic of the theater and movies, things like that. More like, but in the 40s, more like in the Broadway and theater music and popular songs. Trying to raise the level of jazz from dance music to a chamber art form. We say that already. So the status of jazz performer from entertainer to an artist. So the concept was they were it was like a revolution. They were trying to move themselves from that concept of being just an entertainer more to move more into a more artistic approach of presenting and communicating to the audience in a listening way, also visual. Other thing that we can say, one of the characteristics of the bebop era was the drug effects on bebop musicians, the drugs, um, the some of the destructive lifestyles of some of them, a lot of racism and a lot of um, problems with the justice and the police, and some of them got beaten, some of them had a lot of problems in jail and things like that. And very, they suffer a lot because of the um, tendencies and use of drugs. Other bebop characteristics that we should check: the shift to bebop. I should say that the place where there are two places, but one of the places that we should have in our mind where a lot of these things happened was Minton Playhouse, and it was the hippest jazz club in New York at that time. Okay, the first jazz style that was not used for dancing. That's another characteristic. We say that already. Bebop was not enthusiastically accepted by the jazz community at the time of its emergence. The origins of bop is hard to determine, but from the 1940s, we could say that we can expect that everything started to happen 1940, 1941, 42. The word bebop is usually stated to be nonsense syllables. Bebop did not have the same large audience enjoyed by the swing bands. And jazz in general, despite of its popularity, was not viewed as an art form by the general public. Those are the environment for this revolution in music to happen. So bebop, we could say that is an era from which the majority of our jazz giants emerge. Okay? Let's talk about the compositional aspects of bebop. This is very important. Complex melodies. Okay? When we talk about complex melodies, we say melodies that use complex rhythms, a lot of syncopation, a lot of 8 notes, a lot of triplets, 16 notes, large melodic intervals, so flat 9s, major 7s, tritone, sharp 11s, 13 chords, sus chords. Abrupt changes in melodic direction. Highly syncopated, rhythmically quick, and unpredictable. We spoke about that. Original melodies commonly based on popular songs' chord progressions. This is very important. So many of these bebop players, they did a contrafact and their own melodies based on the harmonies and the progressions and melodies of some of the popular songs of the era. Blues form used it often. We could also say the melodies, a lot of unison in the melodies, trumpet and sax together. This is very important. Usually improvised lines. Sometimes one line could say a statement and there was another line ornamentating, creating phrases around the main theme. Standard format, one chorus melody, improvisations, and one chorus melody again for end of the tune. We could say that of the form. That's very important. So we have one chorus melody, then the improvisation, maybe a breakdown, then we hear the solo, then one chorus melody again to go out. Faster tempos, no dancing. Let's start with our first hero that we like to mention. Charlie Parker. Charlie, called Yardbird or simply Bird. Charlie Parker, he was an alto saxophonist from Kansas City. He's credited as the originator of bebop, along the father of bebop, Dizzy Gillespie. 1943, in New York, he was a central figure of a group of musicians, including Dizzy, Monk, Clark, Mingus, Charles Mingus, Oscar Pettiford, Ray Brown, Thelonious Monk. But Charlie Parker was, and he could be, unbelievable, the cornerstone of the bebop music. Charlie Parker's sound, dry, with slow vibrato. This is important. The opposite of all the favor of that time, inflections of the blues coming. He knew how to play the blues because he came out of the church in Kansas City. Like some other musicians like Bob Powell. So they have that formation of the church that prior happened with Duke Ellington, happened with other musicians. Later we will see that some of these musicians also came out of church, some of them like Horace Silver, we could talk more about that later. But right now, we are just trying to define the story of Charlie Parker. The improvisational concept of Charlie Parker is that he constructed solos on a lot of opera structures of the chords. Syncopated accents on particular notes, double time feel even in ballads. You could see Stardust, we could see, a lot of the ballads that he played, like Laura, beautiful. Check out Skylark, double time feel even in ballads. Influenced all the great players from then on. So he influenced Coltrane, Bob Powell, Sonny Stitt, even Dizzy Gillespie. Everybody got inspired by him. Parker also became an icon for the hipster subculture and later the beat generation, personifying the conception of the jazz musician as an uncompromising artist and intellectual, rather than just a popular entertainer. So that was his mentality, more like a revolutionary style concept into the performance, always um, honest to following that moving forward and beyond in the performance. Nobody like Charlie Parker. I recommend if you have a chance to check out the movie Bird, just so you get an idea and read the book too. So let me talk about the father of bebop for me and for many, Dizzy Gillespie. He was a trumpet player. He was called Dizzy. Together with Charlie Parker, he was a major figure in the development of bebop and modern jazz. He was instrumental also in founding the Afro-Cuban jazz too. Manteca is one of the songs that is credited to be one of the first Latin jazz tunes. Although before that, with Duke Ellington, we had um, some Afro-Caribbean songs and Afro-Latin songs. In bebop, Manteca was Dizzy Gillespie first stars cornerstone into composition into the Latin and Afro-Cuban jazz. Dizzy Gillespie, he was a trumpet virtuoso. Some of the songs I recommend you to listen to. Grooving High, beautiful song. Also, A Night in Tunisia, and many others. Evidence. So, Gillespie was a trumpet virtuoso and a gifted improviser, building on the virtuoso style of Roy Eldridge. So we could say, this is very important, which artist had an impact in Dizzy Gillespie? We could say Roy Eldridge. Roy Eldridge. Roy Eldridge. Royeldridge. Okay? Because that complexity and the layers of harmony into his playing was one of the features of the search of Dizzy Gillespie in his music. In addition to his instrumental skills, this is his scat singing, his bend horn, pouchy cheeks, and his light-hearted personality were essential in popularizing bebop. So he also became to be a figure that represented, what jazz is and bebop was all about. Because he really also, I could say that, also brought entertainment back to the scene, because he know how to put together shows for the people and really make them be part of the presentation. He has an enormous impact on virtually every subsequent trumpeter, both by the example of his playing as a mentor to younger musicians. I could witness that because myself, I went to Dizzy's funeral when he died here. I came just when last year that Dizzy was alive, and I went to his funeral, and for me, um, was very make a lot of impact to see people like Winter Marsalis, a lot of people to be there at the moment of the service. So, you know, DC um, make an impact on a lot of people, like Danilo Perez, Arturo Sandoval, John Faris, you know, Giovanni Hidalgo, Ignacio Berroa, a lot of the Afro-Cuban, the members of the World Orchestra, Dizzy Gillespie Orchestra, Orchestra of the Nations, um, Ayrton Moreira, you know, all these people, they play in Dizzy Gillespie, very good friend of Clark Terry. Dizzy Gillespie, at the moment of Bebop, he did great things with the song as a band leader, you know, and she stays strong even when Charlie Parker, in certain moments, you know, when he's all the way. Okay, he influenced Miles Davis, Ronnie, Fat Navarro, Kenny Dorham, and T. Jones. Okay, let's talk about bebop pianists. We should start with the architect of bebop in the piano, Mr. Bud Powell. Bud Powell. Bud Powell. He was classically trained pianist, but he created the model of bebop piano. You know, his his brother also played piano, Richie Powell, and you could hear his brother in recordings like "Boo-doo-bee, boo-doo-doo-dee, boo-doo-bee, boo-doo-dee, ba-da-doo, doo-doo-dee, ba-do, boo-doo-bee, boo-doo-doo-doo-doo." What's the song? What's the name of that song? Don't make fun of my singing. But what's the name of that song? I'm gonna leave that. Richie Powell played, and the trumpet player, his name was Clifford Brown. So check that out. That was later. But Bob Powell, he was classical training pianist, created the model of bebop piano. Approach is coming, and you know, it's derived. It's coming from Art Tatum, with Bob phrasing of Parker and Dizzy Gillespie. Wow, what a combination! You know, elements of Art Tatum, piano player, with Bob phrasing of Parker and Dizzy Gillespie. Wow, amazing. His comping was modern or 2 or 3 notes chords. Okay. We should also talk about another piano player. Well, and if you want to listen to Bob Powell, check out Hallucination. Check out Bob Powell with Charlie Parker. Um, so let's talk about Thelonious Monk. Thelonious Monk, he was a piano composer, co-founder of Bebop. Wow. And he had an approach that it was derived from Waller stride piano, playing an Ellington's percussive company. His improvisation style, he avoided the difficulties of finger dexterity. His technical virtuosity, rapid scales and arpeggios, was not characteristic. He was unique. Compositions, difficult chords, symmetry, unique logic, shifting accents. Those are the things that are characteristic of both power music. Other bebop musicians that we should check. Kenny Clark on the drums. Kenny Clark. He was the house drummer at Milton Playhouse, along with Gillespie, Monk, Charlie Christian, guitar, and Bud Powell. So one of the things is that he put the 4/4 pulse from the bass drum to the right cymbal. That's amazing because start to develop that drive with the cymbal, especially those fast tempos. Bass drum and snare, independent background accents. So will he keep the beat here? There's a lot of interaction between the bass drum and the snare. So when you hear that, that's more of a Kenny Clark approach. Max Roach had a lot of that too, and Jack the Unit later players, but it came from Kenny Clark. Oscar Pettiford, bass player. Well, he was a bass player and a cello band leader. The first bassist to apply virtuosistic approach of Jimmy Blanton within the bebop context. Amazing. We should do study on Oscar Pettiford because of the importance of his work as an improviser in the bass, in the cello, as a band leader because he had a big band too. Many of his recordings are super amazing. So he was a co-leader with DC, and he worked with Duke Ellington. Oscar Pettiford. One of the songs that you should check from Oscar Pettiford, I'm gonna sing it to you. Find out, even with my auto-tune singing, what's the name of that song? Start with T. I'm gonna give you tricotism. Check out Oscar Pettiford. Listen to it. Tricotism. Other bebop musicians. Oscar Peterson, piano. His style derived from Tatum and Bob Powell. Very extraordinary musician from Canada. Okay, he had a lot of technique. Max Roach, drums. He was the house band at Monroe's Uptown House, along with Bird and Dees. And he developed Kenny Clark style into bebop. Other musicians that we should check, Modern Jazz Quartet. That was an ensemble that you should check. John Lewis, piano, arranger and composer. Milt Jackson, vibraphone. And he was warm, bluesy, melodic lines with a slow vibrato. John Lewis, piano, arranger, composer. Milt Jackson, vibraphone. Warm, bluesy, melodic lines with slow vibrato. Other bebop musicians that later came. Sonny Stitt, alto tenor, sax. The Lone Wolf. He recorded over 100 records. Wow. and he was the greatest disciple of Charlie Parker. Okay. I want to mention J.J. Johnson that came in the second period, and we're going to talk about that. But so far, we have talked about the first period of Bebop. Also, I should mention some of the singers that you should check from the Bebop period. Okay? The first one that I should mention is, 1 second, I'm trying to put here the computer. Okay. The first one is Sarah Bond. Let me give you some names. Sarah Bond, Billy Eckstein, Babs Gonzalez. Because why these singers are important? Because they use also the virtuosistic approach in their singing, using syllables and what we call scat. So they use the scat style, scatting, for their solo development. Okay? All right. Okay. So Sarah Bond, okay? Sarah Bond, I'm gonna have to read this one. I don't see that well. My senior citizen moment. Sarah Bond, often called the Queen of Bebop. Her early 1940s work with Dizzy Gillespie and Charlie Parker defined the vocal style. So you should check out her, Sarah Bond. Billy Eckstein. He led a famous big band that served as a breeding ground for bebop musicians and brought a bopish feel to vocals. Bill Eckstein. Babs Gonzalez, a pioneering bebop scat singer who led his own group, Three Beeps and Bob. Eddie Jefferson and Kim Pleasure, known as prisoner of vocalists, sending lyrics to famous instrumental bebop solos. Wow, that was a common thing in the bebop. People used to get a solo and they used to put lyrics on it. You know, we could say Sheila Jordan, that we had the opportunity of working with her. For those who had the blessing of being with her before she passed, she could tell you stories of she putting lyrics, and I saw her book and I played with her, putting lyrics to all the bebop heads from Charlie Parker. She hung with Charlie Parker. Wow, that's amazing. Her name was Sheila Jordan. And she was actually a faculty in our program at the Jazz and NJCU. Anita O'Day is another singer that you guys should check. She's a jazz singer who fast scatting and rhythmic phrasings align it with bebop, you know, with this movement. Joe Carroll, known for his work with Dizzy Gillespie, bringing a humorous and rhythmic scat style to the bebop tunes. Carmen McRae, influenced by the era's complexities. You know, we like to check her out, Carmen McRae. Okay, I want to say some of the things that this is very important if it comes in a question. What are the key characteristics of, bebop singing, the scat, the scatting. And a scat is a fast improvisational vocalization that mirror instrument, resemble or try to sound like instrument solos using the human voice, right? Skabu bohu bru bli bru do bor do do daya boru bor do skablia boru bor do do skablia boru boru die bo skebore boru bo hoblia be boru de bo bor do bi up so do bi up do de bop he boru bari baru do so something like that. Okay, another key. So we say scatting is one of the elements, right? Key vocal on bebop. Vocalists writing and singing lyrics over recorded bebop solos, to vocalists. Wow, like King Pleasure's Moody's Mood for Love. Okay, that's a song that you should check. Okay. King Pleasure's Moody Moods for Love. We're about to finish, but I gotta give you this. Okay, bebop big bands. The vocal is frequently performed with innovators like Dizzy Gillespie and Billy Eckstine. So those later became big band format. Also Ray Brown had one too. Bebop big bands. Vocalists frequently perform with innovators like Dizzy Gillespie and Billy Eckstine. Okay, notable groups and later performers. Vocal groups. Lambert, Hendrix, and Rose. Please check these people out. Lambert, Hendrix, and Rose. Though they were the pioneers of the vocalist styles in the early 50s. Okay? Eventually, later, we could see that the Manhattan Transfer and the Pointer Sister and people like that, they were like inspired by these musicians that came out of the bebop era, and they were vocalizing and using scat in their singing. Okay? So those are the characteristics of singing bebop. Writing lyrics to the bebop solos of the famous jazz players, vocalizing, we call that. So how we call when you put lyrics to a jazz solo? Vocalizing. Okay? And also scatting. Okay? So those are like the singers. Now I want to mention too also some of the key bebop bassists that we should also mention. Remember that we're going to give a listening PDF for you to listen, but you could also Google all these artists, and they have a list of a lot of records that you should check. Check out the Savoy, the Year of the Savoy, Dial Records and Savoy Records, all the Charlie Parker and other musicians too. They used to also do like the Savoy All Stars, and they used to go to the radio and do live performance in the radio. It was amazing. So Oscar Pettiford from 1922 to 1960. Okay, he known as the first bebop bassist. He bridged the swing to the bebop gap with the shuttle-like melody solos and driving lines. So we could say he's credited to be the transition from that big band time and era, more swing, going into the bebop. Okay. Ray Brown from 1926 to 2002. fused early jazz tradition with bluesy bebop, renowned for his robust sound and his beat, a flawless time, and worked with Charlie Parker and Oscar Peterson. So he's very a fundamental bass player that all the bass players should check. Um, there's so much material right now that it's very important that you check them out. The other bass player his name is Paul Chambers. Paul Chambers. He was born in 1935 and he died in 1969. He was frequently described as the Charlie Parker of the bass. He was the premier hard bop bassist, known for his work in the Miles Davis Quintet. You know, he featured some great art called bow and pizzicato playing. We're going to speak about him in the other period. Tommy Potter. Tommy Potter from 1918 to 1988. He was a key member of Charlie Parker's classic quintet in the 1940s. So he played a lot with Charlie Parker. So when you hear old Charlie Parker music, mostly is him. We also have Tommy Potter playing with. He has some records of his own. So check him out, Tommy Potter. To my students, I make them transcribe. Like Donna Lee, that's Tommy Potter playing. With Charlie Parker, that's Tommy Potter playing bass. Now, Mill Hinton, the judge, from 1910 to 2000. He was one of the most recorded bassists in history, known for his technical facility. Okay? Now, we have other people that we need to mention, and I'm not going to, for you to search, that I need to mention them. Wilbur Ware, from 1923 to 1979, known for his unique, heavy rhythmic approach with Thelonious Monk. So he was the bass player that played with Thelonious, Wilbur Ware, okay? Ron Carter, he was born in 1937. He later played with Miles Davis, and we're going to mention about him later. Very important. George Duvier. George Duvivier is the right word to say. From 1920 to 1985, he's renewed from his impeccable technique and extensive recording history. He played with everybody. George Duvivier, okay? So those are the bass players that you should check. Also, I cannot finish this without speaking about Charles Mingus. And we're going to speak about him later, where Charles Mingus is also important coming out of the bebop that went to the second period. So we're going to leave it so far up to here, because the other musicians that we're going to speak, they will come in the second video that we're going to do. So check out the second part, hard bebop, hard bop, and post bebop, okay? Thank you. And check out the listening part and also answer the questions.